Hello, race fans, and welcome to Disc Golf Daily. It is Wednesday, May 8th. Follow us on X, Instagram, and Facebook to stay in the Disc Golf Daily loop. And if you want to help us grow, give us a nice review. We are the podcast that gets you caught up with disc golf news and growth in about 10 minutes. Wednesday is PDGA Growth Day, but first, the news. Our number one news story today, Jake Hebenheimer lost a snake in his van. This story comes to us from UDisc, and you're not going to believe it. The first snake I ever caught was at my grandfather's house, Jake Hebenheimer said. I walked up to him, and the snake was biting my shirt, and I was holding the tail of the snake at 4 years old. My grandpa freaked out. The story all started shortly after a tournament in Arkansas. Jake always stops to help any snake he sees on a road. He spotted a 5.5-foot non-venomous snake on the road. Rather than assist the snake and move on like he normally does, he decided to be cool to show it to his buddy. So he says, I'm not far from the rock spot where he and his buddy are going to go find rocks. So I was just going to hop in the car and drive there with the snake in my hand, Hebenheimer said. As soon as I put the car in drive, it starts trying to strike me. I was swerving. It was not good. So I put the snake down in the passenger seat and was like, I'll find you in 30 seconds when I'm in the parking lot. When he arrived, though, the snake was nowhere to be found. Jake cracked the car windows and went rock hunting. He figured he'd find it on his return. He didn't. So Jake sets off to his next stop, having no idea when the snake would make its presence known. He's driving down the road. There's a 5.5-foot snake in the car, or in the van, and they're going along. On the way to Memphis, he felt something licking his leg, and there's the snake right under his feet while he's driving. In Memphis, he tried to lure the snake out with a frozen mouse he bought at PetSmart. The snake emerged, but instead of Jake catching the snake caught the mouse and got a free snack instead of an eviction. With a big tournament coming up in Nashville, Jake had no choice but to make the over 3-hour drive with the snake in the van. Ever more comfortable with its new traveling buddy, the snake came to cuddle during the trip. This is a quote from Jake. It's dark, I have the music pretty loud, and I didn't notice the snake in my lap until it started trying to crawl up my hand on the steering wheel. I'm going 75 miles an hour down the highway, have a snake in my lap, I'm trying to pull over, but as I try to get to the side of the road, there are 2 semis on the right. I'm struggling and trying to put on the flashers. I'm battling the snake with one arm. I almost get in an accident, and the snake gets away again. When Jake gets to Nashville, he and the snake spent the night together in the van, which is where he sleeps on tour. The snake didn't emerge during the night, but Jake woke up at least 6 times looking for it. After a practice round in Nashville, Jake finds the snake warming itself on the dashboard. As he evicts it once and for all, the snake gets in a final parting shot right on Jake's heel, though Jake feels no malice. If it wasn't for disc golf, Jake Hebenheimer would likely be pursuing a career in field research focused on snakes and amphibians. All touring pros, and now all of our listeners, and anybody reading this article on UDisc, know that Jake is the go-to guy for any info regarding snakes. His one piece of advice, if you see a snake, just give it its space. It's not going to try to hurt you. If you've already seen it, the only way you're going to get bit is if you mess with it. Thanks to UDisc's Alex Williamson and Jake Hebenheimer for an awesome story. Our number 2 news story of the day, Emily Weatherman's OB disc. In case you are not aware, Emily Weatherman, who was vying for the top spot at the DDO this past weekend, threw a shot such that the nose landed very close to the inside of the OB line. Like, if you saw the Kentucky Derby, this shot makes that look like a blowout. And if you didn't see it, go watch it. I don't watch horse racing, but that was amazing. Anyway, there are many comments on the shot, over 400 on the Disc Golf Discussion Facebook thread. Many people are saying the tie goes to the runner, meaning if there's any doubt, the rule would favor the thrower. This is correct. However, in this case, all 3 of her cardmates ruled the disc to be out of bounds, while she said it was in. Looking at the picture, I know I'd want to get an even closer look to make that call. It was crazy close. The tie going to the thrower means that if it's an evenly split decision by the card, so 2-2, then the call favors the thrower. In this case, it is not an evenly split decision, and this call is made by the card. This was the correct procedure to follow, and the rules were litigated properly. Having said that, I have no idea what I would have called if I were on that card. Perhaps Holly Finley's comment sums it up best. Bottom cards, it's going to be safe. Closer to the top, it's out. With how Emily has been playing all season, she led the FPO in cash earnings through February and continues to excel on the Pro Tour. I expect we will see many more shots of hers, and very few of them are going to be out of bounds. Yet another exciting new player is in the FPO. Our number 3 news story, Missy's non-foot fault. In the aggregate playoff at the DDO, Haley King called Missy Ganon on a foot fault. And here's the recap from somebody that was on the card, actually keeping score for the card. So just adding my 2 cents, I kept score for their card during the round and the playoff and had a first-hand look at the throw in question. While I wasn't in a position to question the call, I didn't see the disc move until after Missy released her throw and pivoted. The marshal was right there and made the call that it was not a foot fault, and we continued to the island. During the trophy ceremony, Haley watched the DGN coverage and doubled down to the PDGA staff and the other cardmates that it was in fact a foot fault, but there was nothing to be done at that point. The call has to be made at the time of throw. It's a tough scenario in a playoff when you don't have other cardmates to second your call, and it ended up being deferred to the marshal, which is exactly the right thing to do. On the slow motion replay, you can clearly see her foot, Missy's foot, is behind the marker until quite a few frames after she releases her shot. Then, as she follows through, her foot spins and her toe kicks her marker. Nothing wrong with this, totally legal. I can totally understand Haley's position in the heat of the moment and in the split second you have to make that call. You see the mini marker move. It's easy to presume that it's a foot fault. But anyway, these 2 things just make Friday's podcast, where we're going to discuss video calls and officials, even more timely. Thank you, Reddit, for pointing out these 2 things and maybe clarifying them a little bit more. Our number 4 news story is disc golf growing. So people know I'm involved in this podcast, which tracks the growth of disc golf, and I get asked this question a lot. Is the sport growing? According to yesterday's podcast, the number of courses are still growing at about 7% per year. I've talked with UDisc, and the number of rounds and players is going up again this year, just like it did last year and the 45 years before that. And as we will hear later today, the PDGA's growth report is mixed, but definitely does not contradict the fact that the number of people playing the sport is still growing, even if the number of people in the PDGA and participating in the PDGA events is not. With all of the new players in the sport, we are seeing more and more news articles. New courses, new tournaments, new stores, Chamber of Commerce, course coming soon, champion crowned. These are all articles from the last 2 days that Google found in about 0.4 seconds. A decade ago, none of these would have hit the news. Now they are being covered, which only makes even more people aware of disc golf. We are growing. Disc golf bit off a lot of growth in the last few years. Give us a couple more to finish chewing so we can see the results of all the seeds that have been planted. And Disc Golf Daily will track it the whole way. It's what we do. Now, let's get to that PDGA Growth Report. Okay, we're going to start with the ratings cash line at the DDO. The FPO side, you had needed a 940 to cash, and on the men's side, you needed a 1014 to cash. These are both below average, but still very impressive numbers. In the team cash race, Innova, Discraft, and Discmania went 1, 2, 3 at the DDO. Innova earning 17.5, Discraft 15.3, and Discmania just over 9,000. For the year, Discraft continues to lead over Innova and Discmania. Discraft has just eclipsed $100,000 earned by their team. PDGA approval growth. We track the number of baskets and discs that are approved compared to 2023. Back in the early part of the year, we were over 60% behind. We are now almost half of that. We are just 32% behind the pace. I have a feeling that as the summer continues on, we're going to close that gap, potentially even catching 2023. PDGA event growth. Last year at this point, there were 3,323 events. In 2024, there are 3,379 events, a 1.7% growth rate. Well done, tournament directors. Having said that, the average attendance is down a little bit from 58 to 54 people attending the average PDGA event. And we'll close it out with PDGA membership. Current PDGA members, 105,503. I estimate we will have 132,875 members at the end of the year. That's 97% of the number that we had last year, or 3% less. Current highest PDGA number, just for funsies, 286,969. New members in 2024, 10,893, which extrapolates to 22,000 new members by the end of the year. That does it for us today. If you have any thoughts, news, or opinions, shoot us an email at discgolfdaily@aol.com. Have fun, throw them straight, and hit the thin gap.